cleaning the paint. We're going to call hand checking and body checking. And sportsmanship is an absolute must, okay?
He lets it fly! Oh, I can't believe it!
Welcome back to the Two Shots in the Ball podcast. I am your co-host, Mike McAndrews, along with my much older brother, Jim McAndrews, who is back joining us this week after taking some time off last week to ref some summer leagues and sharpen his tools as an official. Jim, we're real excited about this week. There's a guy that's familiar to the McAndrews family and everybody that has followed high school sports in the state of Michigan for the last 5 decades. So I'm going to introduce our guest. Today's guest has spent more than 50 years covering high school sports for the Detroit Free Press. He has been known as the son of Swami for his predictions of high school football and basketball games. Pioneer in the state of Michigan for covering girls sports, led the Basketball Coaches Association of Michigan to rename the Miss Basketball Award after him. In 2010, he was named Sports Writer of the Year and has won several state and national awards. In 2014, he was only the 5th sports writer inducted into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. In 2018, he was inducted into the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. He is also a member of the BCAM Hall of Fame and the Detroit Catholic League Hall of Fame. He is the pride of Allen Park Cabrini High School. We are pleased to have Hall of Fame sports journalist Mick McCabe join us today on the Two Shots in the Ball podcast. Mick, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Go Monarchs.
Go Monarchs.
You're going to take that, Mike?
Yeah, for now.
For now? Okay.
I'll get back later in the podcast. So, Mick, take us kind of through your journey into sports journalism and what drew you to that coming out of high school or college. What drew you to specifically cover high school sports as long as you have?
Well, first off, I decided on my own because I didn't have a lot of buddies who were signing up for the English/journalism class my sophomore year. And I just said, well, that might be kind of cool to do that. And so the first semester, it was just pure English. And then second semester, we got into the school newspaper. And I wrote a couple stories, and I kind of liked it. And then the first edition of the my junior year, the moderator, Sister Edwards, said, "Why don't you do a column on your summer job," which was working at Tiger Stadium, like the coolest job ever for a kid. That you got enough off time, that you weren't working every single day. But it was really neat doing that, and I got a picture with Bill Freehan, and which the Free Press has blackmailed me with several times. Run, oh my God. Anyway, and so then, like about the third week or so, Monsignor Mano, who was the pastor at Cabrini, wrote a column. He wrote a weekly column for the Detroit News, and the column that week was high school football should be abolished, and they should just play intramurals. And so I told Sister Edward, that's just wrong. And she goes, well, go talk to him. So I went and talked to him. And then I went back to the convent when I got done and says, I got to write about this. And so I did. And he wasn't really pleased with it at all. And then late in my junior year, Monsignor, our Sal Cipriano, a Catholic League legend, quit at Cabrini, where he was our baseball coach. So Monsignor Mano dumped the baseball team. Said, we don't need a baseball team. And so that led to another column of mine where I skewered him pretty good and even brought the Bible into it. And so then I had heard, a buddy of mine told me, just saw Monsignor Mano walking into the high school office with a paper like this. And I said, well, I guess I'll finish high school at Allen Park High.
Doubled your tuition.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that was like the only, that class was the only academic success I had in high school. I was a borderline moron, and I like to say that I was in the third of my class that made the upper 2/3 possible.
We're we're all the same.
Yeah, exactly, except for Susan.
Here
we go.
Already.
Anyway, so I said, maybe I could do this gig like in college too, and maybe even further. So I went to a great journalism school, Mercy College of Detroit, where we offered like 2 journalism classes, and that was it. And then after my junior year, my first junior year, I probably had 2 junior years and 3 senior years. I got a job at the Free Press as a copy boy, and we were back filling glue pots, sharpening pencils, ripping the wire services, the Associated Press, the UPI, the racing wire, all that, and plugging parking meters for the writers and editors. So I did that, and right away helped out Swami, Hal Schramm, the great Hal Schramm, and with covering games because he couldn't get out that often. And I said, this is kind of what I want to do. And then I got a chance, a tryout. After 2 years, they guaranteed you a tryout, either in action line or on the city desk. Well, I didn't want either of those. So I just waited, and eventually they gave me a tryout in sports, and somehow I managed to pass it. I think the pictures I had of the editors with farm animals really helped a lot. And so I became a staff writer, and they said, well, why don't you help Swami, with high school stuff, and then do some college stuff. So I started covering like college football, the Great Lakes, the GLIAC, and the MIAA, and then eventually covered the MAC, and then did Michigan for a couple of years. But that was crazy, trying to cover Michigan football, girls basketball, and high school football, all in the same ball. And I just didn't want to. And they dictated who you got to talk to. It's not like a practice. The practices were closed, of course. And again, I'm not a big guy on watching practices, but if it leads you to get access to the kids, then yeah, I'll be there. So it wasn't that big a deal when I gave up Michigan football, and just stuck with preps ever since.
Mick, that is a great story. I got to tell you, as a fan of high school sports, I really do appreciate what you've done, highlighting these teams and these kids for as long as you have. So thank you for that. And you've covered thousands of games and athletes and coaches over the years. Is there a story that you wrote that might stick out with you in the last 50 years? Maybe besides that 1993 Catholic League championship, when you asked me about Mike's free throw percentage after he made a free throw, and I pulled out of my back pocket that he shot about 72%, which I had no idea what he
He's
was.
dyslexic. It's
It
actually
was 27%.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. But is there a story that sticks out?
There's several. Probably the one that I feel best about was the MHSA has rules, and in the olden days before Mark Ewell ushered us into the 20th century, almost the 21st too. The rules were the rules, and they couldn't be changed. And the one rule that was never changed was the age rule about if you turn 19 before your senior year, you can't play as a senior. Okay, well, kids with Down syndrome start school late, okay? And so they're 19 before their senior year, their 4th year of eligibility. And so they could never participate. And, these kids with Down syndrome, it's not like they were going to be starters or anything like that. So there was Eric Dompierre. It's a kid at Ishpeming High School who had Down syndrome. And he was the backup kicker for Ishpeming. And all he wanted to do was be on the team. I mean, he didn't care if he ever got to play or not. And if they were up 30, okay, maybe he'd try an extra point or something like that. But the MHSA wasn't going to go for it. They stalled. Jack Roberts stalled them forever on this. And then the dad finally took it into his own hands and started a campaign. And I kind of jumped on the bandwagon. And I'll never forget, he testified Eric did before the education committee of the state legislature. And I remember the lead was he had them before hello because he just sat down and he had this great smile. And he was not a big kid at all. And he testified and wrote something. And of course, the MHSAA not wanting to get the state legislature to say, you know what, maybe we should be in charge of high school athletics, which would not be a good thing, trust me. But so they could see the handwriting on the wall. And I remember when they had the rep council and they had the schools vote, and they overturned the rule. Jack Roberts said, "Oh, the MHSA did a great job promoting this," and that was the most disingenuous thing he ever said. Because they tried killing it every step of the way, and to beat him on that, I thought was, and then that year, Ishpeming happened to win a state championship, and for Christmas I got a Christmas card from his dad, and there was a picture of Eric on the sidelines smiling, and the dad says, "This is what you did," and that was very, very meaningful.
Yeah, the fight was worth it.
That was
sure.
one of the
Remember that story. I do.
Yeah, I do too. Very, very impactful.
And there were several of them, and it finished in the top 10 in the country as a series, so that worked out.
As I mentioned in the open, Mick, the Miss Basketball Award has been named after you because of the impact you've had on girls' sports in the state of Michigan. Talk about your early involvement in women's sports, from the camps the notorious camps you had, to shedding new light on women's sports in Michigan. When did you notice that the girls were not getting the same attention as their male counterparts, and that you needed to kind of take the lead on this?
Well, I knew right away when I started at the Free Press in '70 that there was never an article about any female athletes. And so then one of our guys in the ad department, his daughter went to Regina, and they were playing the Operation Friendship. It was a doubleheader, and they were playing actually she was at Bishop Gallagher then, and they played in the consolation game, and the championship game was Mercy against Cass Tech. And it was a great basketball game. And it wasn't like, the Girls Athletic Association, GAA, where everybody's just running around. I mean, these guys were athletes. They were really serious players. And Larry Baker was the coach at Mercy with Mike King. And I remember it was just really good basketball. And late in the game, Mercy was going to win. And the Cass Tech cheering section was almost all girls. They started chanting, "Hey, Mercy, you're hot, but who's going to win it in the parking lot?" And I go, "Oh, my goodness. Wow. These guys are serious." And it dawned on me that this is a whole nother audience that was not being appealed to at all. And, I knew parents bought the paper to see their sons' names in it. Well, don't you think they'd want to see their daughter's name? So I sold the Free Press on, we got to get after this. And, we need to take the lead. And so I'd cover a game. Well, in the early days, I would go to the first half of a game and then come back to the Free Press and rely on the winning coach to call me afterwards, because I had to write up all the little follows of all the other games too. So I'd write the lead and all the follows, and they were long nights, that's for sure. But that was kind of the origin of girls coverage in the Free Press.
Awesome. So how did your camp come about, Mick?
Well, I was involved in the boys. It was a high exposure basketball camp. We started a friend and I also started it. We were at Spring Arbor and then went to Siena Heights, and we would attract the boys, the best boys players in the state. Marley was there, Joe Bear. We had a lot of really good players. And also, I would go down to the BC camp in Rensselaer, Indiana. They had a week of boys and a week of girls. And so I saw the girls, and it was so hard for the girls from Michigan to make an all-star team, because they would just push all the Indiana girls and the Illinois girls. So I said, we can do a boys high exposure. We should do something for the girls. And so we started up at Mike Dempsey, a fellow referee who used to coach too. He and I got together with Bob Taylor, and Jim Anderson was our connection in Traverse City. And we had it up there, and it went really, really well. I think we ended up, they redid all the electrical in the gyms one summer, so we had to move to Northwood. But I think we went for about 24 years, and we had college coaches from all over the country coming in. And the fact that it was in Traverse City, they loved it.
Yeah.
They could, hang out in Traverse City. And so that's how that camp took off. And it was really, we had many of the best players in the state.
You did.
Yeah, certainly. And it was kind
Aaron
of a prereq.
Rewald.
Aaron
Well,
Rewald.
yeah, you got to pay for that camp if you want to make Mick's all-state list.
No. You know what's funny? I really didn't have many friends at the Detroit News. And so I guess one of the editors there said, something's wrong here. So they started calling coaches, asking them if I ever said, if you want to make all state, you have to come to camp, or, anything like that. And I never did.
No.
If the coach called and said, what about this camp? I said, it's a good camp. It's good exposure to college coaches. I never said good exposure to the Free Press or anything like that.
Right.
And then what was funny is the Sports Editor of Detroit News sent his daughter to our camp for 2 years. So,
She make all state?
Yeah.
no,
In the news
Not
she
all-
did, not
In the
free
news.
press.
Yeah.
good player though.
Yes.
So, in 55 years of covering high school basketball, since this is a basketball podcast, who's the best player, both the boys' side and the girls' side, that you've ever seen come out of the state of Michigan?
It's so simple.
Aside from the 5'10" point guard from Carter Mooney in 1993.
She was 5'10". Irvin Johnson.
Yeah.
My goodness, that's just and I contend that there could be an argument made that he's the best basketball player ever, because he changed the way the game is played. To my knowledge, I know this is heresy, especially living in the Detroit area. Gordie Howe wasn't the best hockey player, and neither was Wayne Gretzky. It was Bobby Orr, because he changed the way the game was played. So Irvin, he was just an absolutely wonderful kid. He grew up in the Lansing area and had to go to Everett because of busing.
Yeah.
And so it was funny, the bus would drop him off and he'd leave and go to Sexton, because that's where all his buddies were. And then finally his dad says, you're here at Everett, you're going to stay there. And when he was a senior, I had a teacher tell me there was a lot of racial unrest in Lansing during his high school years, but it never got to Everett. And they said because he wouldn't let it happen at Everett. So he was easily the boy. And then Rakia Jackson, who is at right now
Currently in the WNBA.
could be an all-star, having a really good season. Yeah, and she was the best. I thought Dina Head was the best, and Dina was great. And what's funny is Pat Head told me she had never had a player come in as a freshman so ready to play college basketball. And that was really a homage to Fred Thoman, who was a terrific coach, and he made Dina college ready. And Rakia but she just did everything.
Yeah, I remember I refed a game of hers, and they legitimately alley-oop without her dunking. I'm like, that's the first time I've seen a girl with they ran a play for her for an alley-oop. Yeah, it was crazy.
She was the best.
Yeah, and in terms of magic, I mean, you're right. The game changed. Just the size of the point guards alone and what guys can do at 6'5", 6'6". It's the norm now, right? Big guards and he changed everything about the game.
Yeah, and he was 6'9", and I'll never forget. I was covering Michigan. It was funny because Kurt Sylvester covered Michigan, Charlie Vincent covered UAD and Michigan State, because Michigan State wasn't that good. And so I told the bosses that, this kid is Irvin Johnson is special, and we got to someone has to cover Michigan State all their home games. So Charlie had the choice because of seniority, and he chose U of D because they had a lot of kids coming back from a team that had lost in the NCAA tournament to Michigan the year before. So I got to see Irvin, and I got to cover him as a freshman. And I'll never forget, I think they were playing Middle Tennessee State or something, and it was the first time he had played point guard at Michigan State. And afterwards, I said, "What do you think about playing there?" He goes, "Well, who knows? You know, coach wanted me to do it, so I did it. Who knows? Maybe it'll come in handy somewhere down the line." So it did.
Yeah, I think that worked out.
Yeah, just question his high school days. Was it he could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted? Because I've seen C. Webb, he was just a man amongst boys, but could Irving just do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted in high school?
Almost. They lost one game his senior year. They sold out Jenison when they played Lansing Eastern, and Lansing Eastern happened to have a kid named Jay Vincent who had a really good pro career. And I never forget after and Lansing Eastern beat them, and they, the coach at Everett said, "This is my fault. I put Irvin inside. I should never do that. He'll never play in there again. He's going to be out on the perimeter, so they can't gang up on him." But Irvin's jump shot wasn't anywhere near, and he was never known in the NBA as a pure shooter, but he wasn't a particularly good shooter at Michigan State, but he worked on it like crazy and became a good shooter. But, he was really good at taking the ball, the basket, pull-ups, stuff like that. But the best thing was he'd grab a defensive rebound and 3 dribbles. He was at half court.
Yeah, awesome. Amazing.
Rim to rim.
Yeah, and that year, before his senior year at Everett, Jamie Huffman had moved into Lansing Everett's district. So Irvin, because they had lost to Catholic Central in the semifinals the year before when Irvin was a junior.
Junior year,
And
yeah.
So Irvin took Jamie with him. Every day when they went out to play basketball, they'd go to different playgrounds. He made sure Jamie was with him because he knew Jamie could help him win a state championship.
Great story. I'm going to switch a little bit on you. I'm going to get some info, your stance on officiating. Before I started getting into officiating, you weren't known to be the most friendly writer regarding officiating. I think you've softened since I've become an official anyway. And you have close friends now that are legendary officials. What's your take on the current state of officiating in Michigan?
Well, it was better in the older days. And I'm going to sound like a 76-year-old old fart because that's what I am. But what I see today, I don't see today, actually. I don't see the mentoring going on where guys would go, the referees, and I would join them several times to a bar afterwards. And they would talk about games and, how they officiated and different calls. And I'll never forget Jim Marino. Oh, my God, legendary official.
Oh, yeah.
Just lighting up Mike Dempsey after he made this call. He made this call at St. Alphonsus. And Marino go, "What do you got?" He goes, "It's a fake charge." He goes, "A fake charge? What are you doing?" And we laughed for that for an hour. But that's how these guys got to be good officials. George Solomon would be around, Sammy Taub. I mean, there were a lot of, and they would get together and mentor these guys. I don't see a lot of that happening these days.
What do you think the reason is for the shortage? I mean, you need to have the young guys to be mentors. What's the main reason you think for the shortage?
Well, the officiating isn't always the most glamorous job. And then you have to put up with morons, parents who don't know anything. And I would just sit there at my daughter's game and some guy would be yelling 3 seconds, 3 seconds. And I said, "You don't even know what 3 seconds is. Please stop." And they just don't know the rules, and they just yell and scream at officials. And, why would I take that? I mean, if I were an official, the gym would be half empty by the fourth quarter because I just
Yep.
say, you're out of here.
Right.
And that's what,
Right.
and there's some younger officials now who don't have the guts to tell a coach, shut up and sit down, or just boom, give them a technical, or tell parents, you're out of here. Oh, God. Sammy Taub once threw George Steele out of a game, and he threw his wife out
Right.
of the game, too. You go with him, and threw her out. It was great.
Did you write about it?
I didn't. I
No.
almost did, but I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah. Speaking of officiating and some rules, what do you think about adding a shot clock here in the state of
Who's
Michigan?
going to run the shot clock?
That's my take on it.
That's
exactly.
Jim's take on it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't get the regular clock operating all the time correctly.
Exactly. And everybody's,
my
oh,
take
it'll
on
be
it.
such a great deal. Well, maybe not. When the guy resets it and it shouldn't be reset, or when it goes off when it shouldn't and play gets stopped. No, I'm afraid that wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
along those lines of what, that's a hot topic for the MHSA and coaches every year. And the other one is seeding the tournament. B-Camp put a huge proposal together a couple of years ago on seeding the tournament. What's your take on if the tournament should be seeded through the regional or not?
Well, it's gone that way, and okay if they want to do it. Personally, I don't like it being seeded because I liked when Orchard Lake St. Mary's #1 played St. Mary's of Redford #2 on a Monday night. I liked a Monday night, first night.
First
At
game.
Orchard Lake, they oversold the game. It was a cold night, and guys are slipping all over the place because they opened the doors because it got so hot in there. I loved it when Saginaw Hill #2 played Saginaw #1 on a Monday night. You got to play them sometime,
Yeah.
but it's better, I guess, for the crowds to build towards the 1 and 2 playing on a
on a
on
neutral
Friday
site
in
too.
the district final, and that's going to help the gate.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons they did it. And the regional, and they do have the thing in place now where they can seed them. They have a formula,
Yeah, the MPR, they're using it to seed the district right now.
right? So why not the region?
Exactly.
Right.
So along the lines of what Jim talked about with the officials, I want to talk about coaching. Every year, there seems to be jobs open left and right at the high school level. Some for good reason, some because coaches are just getting burnt out. I talked to a lot of coaches around the state that just seen the overwhelming majority say that the negative parent interaction is one of the main reasons they consider getting out of coaching. I've personally seen this change drastically, in my opinion, in the last 10 years or so. Why do you think today's high school athletic climate, so many negative interactions are happening between coaches and parents?
Well, first of all, we can blame ESPN and Dick Vitale because parents, you can see so many games on TV, and these announcers break it down pretty well. So if these parents think, okay, I got it, I know it now, so I know as much as a coach knows. And these parents know nothing. If I was ever going to coach, there's only one place I would coach, at an orphanage. Because these parents are morons. They know nothing. And all they care about is their kid starts every game, is the leading scorer, and gets a scholarship. That's the big thing, the scholarship. Because in their eyes, their kid is, oh my God, what a wonderful kid. Any coach would love to have him on their team. Forget the fact that they can't play at the next level. But there's so much money involved. And if the coach, if all those three don't happen, these parents will hold a grudge for the rest of their lives against these coaches, and they will go after them until they can get them fired.
Yeah, and you see that more and more today. It's more prevalent today than it ever has been of, these groups of parents, specifically in public schools, going to the board or to the superintendent and
Yes.
getting a guy fired. I've often said it, like parents don't understand that coaches spend more time with your kids than they do with their own a lot of times.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that was part of the problem I had. I was, my kids are playing games, but I have to cover and write about somebody else's kid. That was
Yeah.
always a tough thing. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of coaches who spend more time with the parents' kids than the parents do.
Yeah.
I mean, in today's world, when you're working all the time, they just ignore it.
Yeah.
Kids often.
I remember when I was at a coaching clinic, not Dan Marley, the brother was getting inducted
Jeff
into
or
Jeff into
Steve.
his
Steve.
Steve
was.
Yeah.
Steve was
Right.
getting invited.
Yeah.
And he said every year, first ball goes up. I got 12 kids on my team, 24 sets of parents. I got 14 that are pissed off at me because their kid didn't start. By the end of the game, I got another 6 that are pissed off because their kid wasn't in at the end of the game. So,
Yeah. Well, Art Pelzer was the girls' coach at Frankenmuth. And when he retired, he was the winningest girls' coach in state history. Well, he had a parental meeting before the season. He'd set down all the parents and say, listen, I don't want to hear you bad-mouthing me up there because it will get down to me and I will find out about it. Now, there's nothing I can do to you, but I can do something to your daughter, and I will. So he had no problems with parents. Of course,
taking notes, Mike?
No, I can't. Not in 2025. I'm not.
he was so successful he could get away with that.
Yeah.
That's funny. Let's lighten it up a little bit and go back to the actual game. You mentioned a lot of matchups that you've seen in players, but what are some of the most memorable high school basketball games that you've covered that come to mind?
Detroit Southwestern against Cooley in the '87 state championship game. And 5 weeks before that game, maybe 4, but I think it was 5, Southwestern destroyed Cooley by 30 points in the PSL championship. And they were in opposite brackets. They get to the state finals, and Cooley beat them in overtime. It was just an amazing. I think it was '87 or something like that. Amazing game.
Up and down?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like 82-77 or something like that.
Yeah.
Lansing Everett, when they beat Brother Rice in the state championship game, Irvin's senior year, Kevin Smith for Brother Rice hit a shot from beyond half court, I think, at the buzzer to send it into overtime. Now you can say, well, if there were 3-point shots, they would have won.
Yeah. Right.
You can't go. There would have been a lot of other shots. It would have been 3-point shots.
Right.
How about that? How about the? Were you at the Breslin for that Detroit Rogers finish years ago?
Oh, again, yes, it happened right in front of me.
Right.
Yeah, against Bel Air, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that
Yeah.
Bel Air? Yeah, that
Yeah.
was great. And then I'll never forget East Catholic beating Tri-Unity Christian when Andrew Mitchell comes down and boom, nails a 3 at the buzzer to win the state championship. That was another one that was great. And then when Chris Coles for Saginaw Bona Vista, they missed a free throw and he gets it, and from way before half court, throws something up and it went in. And they beat Flint Beecher. And Moses Lacey was just, he jumped up and thought it was after the buzzer, but when he got the ball off, and he accepted the trophy, and he dropped it accidentally on the way to the thing, and he didn't stop to get it. And I said, "Why didn't you pick it up?" Because I already heard the thud. There was no. What really happened is when he jumped up, he tore the seam in his pants right down the middle. And if he would have bent over to get it, it would have been
Everybody would have known
Miami.
it. Yeah.
Best game ever. That's it.
He
Yeah.
couldn't do it. So, and Chris Coles, I had known since he was really young because his dad, Charlie
At Central.
Saginaw. And I used to come he'd bring him down to the boys club in St. Cecilia's, and I would sit right behind the Saginaw bench just to hear Charlie talk to his players. He was amazing.
I remember when Charlie got hired, I was at Central, Charlie got hired, and he was coaching Marley and took him
Yes.
took him out of the post and put him on the perimeter and made him an NBA player.
Yep, because the year before, his junior year, they played UCLA in the NCAA tournament. And UCLA was with Reggie Miller, was able to gang up on Marley inside. And so the day they got back from Salt Lake City, Marley went out for baseball because he was a really good pitcher in high school. But by then he had lost it. And Charlie made him a multimillionaire. You're right.
Yeah.
Turned him into a perimeter player.
Yep.
So, Mick, you've been involved in a lot of the in writing stories about a lot of the transfer issues in the state of Michigan over the years, and undue influence and illegal. The current high school transfer landscape. We have rules in place to protect against the illegal recruiting of top talent. Yet there seems to be a free for all every summer of kids changing schools and being eligible. Do you ever see the MHSA changing the rules at all? Maybe to a one-time transfer waiver. Also, do you think the NIL world we live in college trickles down to the elite athlete in high school?
Well, I could see the NIL trickling down to the very, very elite, which I think would be a shame, but that's a whole nother story. I wouldn't change the transfer rule. I mean, you got to protect these coaches who are, in a district that isn't open.
Yeah.
And whereas you've got these other districts going after kids and recruiting them. And, we did get Crowell Jermaine Crowell at Belleville, the football coach. We got him suspended for 2 years for undue influence on kid. And then he even had two former players in previous years, had former players living in his house. And now he's the head coach of River Rouge.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the MHSA received an anonymous video of him in the gym with more than 5 players during non-contact, where you could have more than 5 in. Now, the MHSA couldn't prove exactly what he was doing in there with those guys, but I don't think he was leading a yoga class or anything. So he's going to be up to, his old tricks, and we'll see what happens down the road with him.
Yeah, and for years as a Catholic League guy, I've been a lifelong Catholic League guy. For years, all we ever heard was, you're recruiting, you're a private school. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, I am the world's worst recruiter in the history of high school basketball because everybody's 5'9" and white on my team. But now it's kind of a free-for-all in a lot of districts, too, that are open enrollment. You see kids moving all the time. And, I've even seen it over the summer, right? Like we're in the midst of summer camp right now, and you'll go to camp and see a kid with one high school, go to a second camp, he's with a different high school already.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it just...
And I know what you feel like because I went to Cabrini in Allen Park. Well, we didn't recruit. Maybe that's why we weren't any good. There was no recruiting going on there for football or basketball. And so I never quite understood it. So, it's going on like crazy in the Catholic League and in the suburbs. And the MHSA is struggling to keep ahead of they keep making rules. They had to add another one and another addendum to the transfer rule because of what happened at Ann Arbor Richard. 2 girls from Ann Arbor Huron transferred, and the coach at Richard taught or teaches at Ann Arbor Huron. Now, we didn't have those kids in class, so they had to change the rule to make it that even if you're in the same building as somebody, you can't do that.
It's something they're going to have a hard time staying ahead of for sure. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It's a moving target.
Right, and the cheaters are just, that's why the NCAA rule book is so thick, is because the guys, keep looking for ways to cheat. And that'll be the same thing in high school.
Policing it at the high school level has to be a tremendous undertaking for the MHSA.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jack Roberts and Tom Rashid would say, well, we're not an investigative bureau. Well, you should be. If you're gonna rent out Ford Field and the Breslin Center and charge people big money, relatively speaking, to come to these games, then you should do everything you can for to level the playing field. And I think Mark Ewell and these guys are trying to do that.
They're trying.
Yeah, certainly.
Good. Going back to your Free Press days, there have been a couple stints there. One of the things you're known for is the son of Swami.
Yes.
And the humorous names for schools. How did the whole son of Swami thing start?
Well, for years, since at least 1959, Hal Schramm, the great Hal Schramm, who had my job before I did, he was known as a Swami. And he would make predictions on basketball games and during the state tournament. And so eventually when the football playoffs began in 75, I said, you got to do this for football too. And he said, no, it's just a basketball thing. Well, eventually he did. And so he was a Swami. And then when, I was right there with him. And then when he passed, they said, well, we still want to do this. What do we do? I said, how about son of Swami? And they said, yeah, that sounds okay. And then I was trying to figure a way to maybe make it a little different. And so I remember started making some of the names different of the schools. And then Gene Myers, who was our prep coordinator at the time, said, yeah, that's really a good idea, but you have to do it for everybody. Oh my God. And so for football,
Never mind.
256 teams. That was it wasn't nothing. It wasn't hard to pick the winners.
Yeah.
It was just coming up with some of these names for these people.
They are very funny.
Yeah, did you ever take any heat from anybody on some of the names?
Oh yeah, of course. But they would write me or something, and I'd say, well, okay, but how do you think these people at that school feel? They're mad too.
Have a sense of humor.
Yeah, everybody gets mad. That's okay.
All
as
right,
long as they read.
I'm going to ask you to keep your son of Swami hat on right now. So once and for all, tell our listeners, you've got Jim McAndrews, who coached at Cardinal Mooney for 10 years, was my high school coach, and then on staff with me. I'll be headed into my 28th season at Cardinal Mooney. My sister Susan coached 25 years on the girls' side, successful program. Once and for all, tell everybody, for bragging rights, who's the best coach in the McAndrews family? And if you say Susan, I swear I'll mute your microphone, Mick.
He's muted.
He muted himself.
What can I
We
say?
get it.
All right.
We get it.
No answer?
What can I
No
say?
answer?
Oh, he tried.
No,
He was
you can be
muted.
I
honest.
tried.
Yeah.
You muted me.
He tried. Yeah.
Uh,
Funny.
So we've got me. Okay, good. So now that you're on your second stint at retirement, what are your plans? Personally, do you still plan on being involved in prep sports in any freelance way, or are you off riding into the
I think
sunset?
I'm done.
With, by the way, I found out from the Catholic League office that you just celebrated your 50th wedding anniversary with Mrs. McCabe. So she punched her ticket to St. Hood 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my brother is the pastor at Divine Child, and he had spoken to the previous pope, and he waived the 5-year waiting. So as soon as she goes, they're starting the canonization thing. Yeah. I have no plans. When we were in Chicago, we have kids in New York, Chicago, and Seattle, and the grandkids are in Chicago and Seattle. Last time we were in Chicago, Beckett, the eldest 11-year-old, says, "Papa, are you going to retire?" I said, "I don't know. What do you think I should do?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think you should retire." I said, "Why?" He said, "So you can spend more time with us." So I called him that day that I went in, June 3rd. I went in, and Bill Bradley's a sports editor now. I said, "Bill, what happened on June 3rd, 1970? "I don't know. What?" I said, "It was my first day at the Free Press."
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I said, "Guess what happened on June 3rd, 2025, which was that day?" He goes, "That's today. I don't know what." I said, "It's my last day at the Free Press." So I called up Beckett, And I said, Beckett, I did what you wanted. I retired, and now you have to spend more time with me too. So
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
you.
congratulations on that. Well-deserved 55 years at one company creating memories for student athletes for the last 5+ decades is an amazing accomplishment. Pissing off a few coaches and officials along the way is no big deal when you talk about all the memories you've created for student athletes. Mick, I want to thank you for coming on with us today. You've been somebody that the McAndrews family has enjoyed not only doing your work, but getting to know you over the years. I remember that story Jimmy referenced, in 1993, Callahan Hall, when we beat St. Florian. And I can remember, and you talk about your legacy and your work. I have a scrapbook my mom put together, and that article is still in there. Where Mick McCabe says there's no need for McAndrews to use the Heimlich maneuver this time.
It was okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Right?
good. It fit. Yeah. Mick, really, I said it early to start too, what you've done covering high school sports and for the student athletes and the joy you brought to them. I enjoyed it, and thank you for all you've done.
Well, thank you. You guys have been a part of it, and it's been a blast. So
Yeah.
It
we
is,
go.
and I've appreciated, Mick, how our friendship has evolved over the last 5 to 10 years, getting to know you on a personal level. And I appreciate what you've done for not only our family, but athletes and coaches around the state of Michigan. So we'll miss your work, but we'll certainly, wish you well in retirement this time.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you,
Mick.
Mick.
All right.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
guys.
See ya.
Well, Jim, episode 6 of Two Shots in the Ball podcast is in the book. And what a great time talking to the Hall of Famer and legend Mick McCabe. Just an encyclopedia of high school sports knowledge in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, that was fun. That was really fun picking his brain and talking about some of those memorable moments he's had. And when I said it earlier, I appreciate what he's done for the student athletes for that long period of time in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, and as we've discussed, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of kids over the last 55 plus years who have memorabilia and scrapbooks with Mick McCabe in it, and creating lifelong memories from them from their high school days. So as we wrap up the podcast, any plans for you? Are you working any camps, or are you done for now?
Camps are done. Yeah. Went for a couple, 2-3 weeks there with some camps where I'm all done, but I think you have one coming up, right?
Yeah, we're going to finish. The Cardinals will finish their summer schedule in June before the MHSA mandated shutdown this week. We'll be at Oakland University Thursday and Friday this week against some really good competition. So looking forward to playing against that competition and finishing
No rest for the weary. No rest.
Finishing up a successful summer for us.
Yep.
So again, episode 6 in the books.
6.
We made it.
Made it. Then.
We made it to 6. We look forward to doing another podcast next week with another guest that hopefully continues to bring some dynamic content to you. We want to thank you for listening. For Jim, I'm Mike McAndrews, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you. See ya.
I forgot.
We want to clean in the paint. We're going to call hand checking and body checking, and sportsmanship is an absolute must. Okay.
He lets it fly.